As with all aircraft, the TA-4F or J has certain danger areas that must be remembered. Since fire protection is based upon the airplane's maximum gross takeoff weight, the loading capabilities must be known. Internally, the TA-4F or J contains a large wing tank with a capacity of 570 gallons and a fuselage tank located behind the aft cockpit with a capacity of 109 gallons. The TA-4 usually flies with two 300-gallon external drop tanks on the outboard wing racks. A 400-gallon drop tank may be accommodated on the centerline rack only. Normally, takeoffs are made with a short load of 1,000, which amounts to about 6,500 pounds. Maximum takeoff fuel weight for this airplane is 8,000 pounds. Normal fuel load on landing can vary from 1,000 pounds, or 150 gallons, to 3,000 pounds, which amounts to 450 gallons. It should be noted that the drop tanks are exceptionally strong on this airplane, and it can make a wheels-up landing on the tanks. Fuel tanks have some fuel remaining, as well as ample space for fumes. The drop tanks are normally pressurized for landing, but in case of an emergency, they can be depressurized by the pilot. As for hazard areas, on TA-4 aircraft, the jet engine inlet is located behind the aft cockpit on each side of the fuselage. The danger area extends out at least 10 feet with the full power. The engine exhaust can cause severe burns and blast damage at ranges from 60 to 150 feet, depending upon engine power. The turbine blade danger area is situated about mid-fuselage. Engine improvements have reduced blade failures, but a foreign object sucked into the inlet could cause the blades to disintegrate. The jettison danger area for the canopy is normally aft of the cockpits and includes the entire fuselage area out to about 6 feet on either side, although wind and the angle of the fuselage will affect the danger area. The seat ejection danger area is forward of the airplane. The seats can be ejected at ground level and at 0 speed. This airplane has no anti-skid system, and if a maximum braking stop is made, there may be a danger area near each wheel due to hot brakes. The safest area when working around an airplane with suspected hot brakes is directly in front of or behind the tire assemblies. Safety pins carried in a bag stowed in the aft engine access door should be used to prevent accidental retraction of the landing gear. The LOX tank on the TA-4 is located in the aft section of the fuselage on the starboard side. The 4J does not have a smoke abatement system, so this is not a hazard. Weapons being carried are, of course, always an extreme hazard, and the TA-4F or J can carry a wide assortment. These are carried on pylons mounted under the wings or on the centerline pylon. It must be remembered that a bomb rack contains an explosive separation device that could cook off in a fire, so that these areas should be avoided. With multiple bomb loads, there is an explosive separation device for each bomb. This is also true of the drop tank pylons. The TA-4F carries two 20-millimeter guns. The training TA-4J will normally have the port gun removed to lighten the airplane. The guns are mounted in the wing roots, and their muzzles can be seen. The firing zone is, of course, directly in front of each gun. The approach to a TA-4 after a crash is like that for any other airplane, taking into consideration its special danger areas. If the engine is running, it's a good idea to give the pilot the cutoff sign. He might be dazed but not unconscious, and possibly could respond. If the airplane is surrounded by flames, you'll have to clear a way in using standard procedures. That will be the MB5, using light water. The cockpit area, of course, should be kept cool, not only to protect the crewmen, but to prevent cook-off of the ejection rockets in the seats. If the engine is running and the pilot does not respond to the cut-off sign, on this airplane the engine can be stopped by climbing on the wing and using the port engine access door to reach the throttle bell crank. The bell crank counterclockwise reduces the engine to idle. By cutting the rods here and here, the bell crank can be rotated far enough to shut the engine off. Since it is always hazardous to jettison a canopy, a normal entry should always be made, if at all possible. To open the canopy manually, the TA-4 has an exterior canopy control access door located on the port side below the forward cockpit. Inside the door on some TA-4s is an override external latch handle. This unlocks the rifle bolt locking mechanism in the cockpit. Pull down the external canopy control handle, then swing it all the way outboard. Extend the pump handle and pump the canopy open. This should take about 50 strokes. If the canopy can be pumped open, it means that the hydraulic system is intact and that once open, the canopy will stay open. In the event forcible entry is required, the canopy should be chopped through close to the metal frame. Using a power saw is faster and does not leave jagged edges, but it should only be used when there is no danger from spilled fuel. Notice that the canopy on this airplane has a center bar. This makes it almost impossible to remove a crewman through the canopy, and a forcible entry should not be made as any other way to safely remove the canopy. But if the situation demands that the canopy be jettisoned, an external emergency jettison handle is located on each side of the fuselage about midway between the two cockpits. Even so, jettisoning the canopy should be the last resort, and never if either crewman's face curtain has been pulled. The handle is held by a latch. Pushing the latch panel releases the handle. To operate, the handle is pulled hard to the full length of the lanyard, about 6 inches. Remember that when the canopy is jettisoned, it arms the seat ejection system, and the seat ejection system must be safetied before working in the cockpit. Each of the seats must be safetied by means of a head knocker located behind each crewman's head. Pull the head knocker down until the safety lock catches. This completely safeties the seat's ejection. The head knocker will not raise until the safety lock is manually depressed. Remember, when reaching in the cockpit, do not pull the face curtain ejection handle. And do not pull the secondary ejection handle. If either crewman is unconscious, he may not be receiving oxygen, and you must quickly prevent suffocation by removing his oxygen mask. Raise the sun visor on his helmet. Unfasten the crewman's oxygen mask. You should have memorized the 3 types of fasteners so that whichever type he's wearing will be totally familiar. Do not remove the helmet.
And do not kiss the pilot.
To the flow of oxygen, disconnect the oxygen hose by means of a slip ring which operates by sliding the ring up and pulling on the hose. Warning: do not disconnect or cut the oxygen hose until after the oxygen mask is removed, since this would automatically cut off the crewman's only source of oxygen and air. If the engine is still running, it should be shut off before beginning the next phase of the rescue. On the TA-4, a throttle is located in each, but only the forward throttle can be used to shut the engine off. The throttle is pulled aft to the idle position, then outboard past a detent and all the way aft. Both cockpits have a manual fuel shut-off lever located aft of the throttle against the bulkhead. This lever can be used to shut off the engine. The lever has a spring-loaded safety cover that must be lifted before it can be pulled fully aft to the emergency detent. Before the crewman can be rescued, his parachute must be unbuckled from his harness assembly. The two hip coke fittings are first disconnected. They may be difficult to see because of the crewman's survival gear. Coke fittings on Navy parachutes operate by lifting the locking latch upward and with the same motion rotating the knurled locking bar downward. Normally the fittings will operate. If they do not, then separate manually. When disconnecting the two shoulder fittings, be careful not to pull the parachute D-ring. Coke fittings used by the Air Force are slightly different, but they operate in much the same manner. If necessary, the parachute harness can be cut with a rescue knife. As a last resort, the crewman can be released from the seat, pulling the emergency harness release handle. But this leaves 60 pounds of parachute and survival gear attached to the crewman, and it's extremely difficult to lift him from the cockpit. Before lifting the crewman, disconnect the G-suit and seat pan hoses by pulling. The crewman is now ready to be lifted from the cockpit. It's a two-man job. The best method is for one man to straddle the nose or to stand on the edges of the cockpit while the second man remains on the ground or on a ladder. This operation on a TA-4 is much the same as for all high-performance jets and should be practiced from time to time by all crash crewmen. When the gear is down, the cockpit is several feet above the ground, and air crewmen as well as crash crewmen have been seriously injured when they fell, so caution must be used. If time is available after the crewmen have been rescued, safety pins can be inserted. These pins should be carried by all crash crews. Safetying should include the canopy jettison handles in each cockpit. If the canopy is blown, put the pins in anyway, because one or both of the canopy initiators may not have been fired. The seat ejector initiators should also be safetied in each cockpit. If not already done, the safe should be inserted in the landing gear. Safety pins also should be inserted in the bomb racks and fuel tank racks. A down tail hook should be lifted and secured before the airplane is moved. In case the crewmen are trapped in an inverted airplane, the nose must be lifted before the canopy can be opened. If the nose wheel is extended, the crane should to the strut tie-down ring in the nose wheel well. If the wheel is not extended, it may be necessary to cut through the door or the fuselage and make the attachment to any strong structural member. If a crane is not quickly available, it may be possible to partially raise the airplane by means of heavy-duty jacks. As a last resort, dig under the canopy, although the length of the TA-4 canopy makes it difficult to open by this method. Chopping through the side of the fuselage is almost impossible, but it is to chop through the canopy. When it comes to the actual fighting of fires on the TA-4F or J, one particular point should be remembered. Almost the total wing area of this airplane is wet and should not be ruptured or penetrated in any way. Except for the wing and fuselage tank areas, this airplane can be penetrated almost anywhere with a bayonet nozzle. To sum the whole thing up, it does take a certain amount of time to check out an unfamiliar airplane, both for the air crewman and the crash crewman. It's obvious why the air crewman should not mind taking the time, but about the only motive the crash crewman has is his own sense of responsibility and pride in his crew and in himself. When the time comes, He wants to do everything he can to get the man out of that airplane fast and with a minimum of danger to himself. The only way to do this is by knowing in advance what you're going to do. And maybe those early day crash crews did have an easier time making a rescue. But for the modern jet, we need today's highly trained and dedicated crash crewmen. When it comes to the rescue of air crews, there is no substitute for the vital work of the crash crew.